Hello, hello class 8 student. Today I am going to continue the chapter from geography, that is mineral and power resources. In the last discussion, we discussed about the various form of minerals and how it is attracted. Like there are two kinds of minerals, like metallic minerals and non-metallic minerals, minerals and non-ferrous minerals. So in the last class, at the later part of the discussion, we discussed about the different kinds of minerals which are used in our day-to-day life, like the ore that we are getting, like bauxite. From bauxite we are extracting aluminium, and aluminium is used in constructing, in making aeroplanes and utensils that we are using in our kitchens. The manganese which we use, which are used to make dry cell battery that we use in our torchlight or remote of our TV or any toys. Manganese is also used to make steel, paints and fertilizers. And important mineral is limestone. Limestone is used to make cement. Limestone is the major ingredient in making the cement, and this cement is used for construction works, buildings, houses, etc. Gold is very common among the women in the world, and this gold has been existing since the ancient time, and it can be said it is a noble metal. So gold is used for making jewelries or electronic products. Another minerals that I have mentioned, which is very common and we are using in our day-to-day life, is salt. The salt, in scientific term we call as halite, and this halite can be also termed in the chemical formula like sodium chloride, and it is commonly used as common salt in our day-to-day fooding of our life, and we used to add salt. Without salt, the dishes that we are making is not tastier. Now let's continue with the power resources in this chapter which are included. In power resources, we need to know that there are mainly two types of power resources. Two types of power resources. One is renewable and the other is non-renewable. Renewable we will discuss a little bit later, but let's first discuss about non-renewable resources because we are well acquainted with this non-renewable resources. Now power resource means what? From where we get power, energy, that we are driving our cars, we are running our machineries in the factories. So to run the machineries in the factories we need powers, we need some kinds of minerals which gives us power. So non-renewable resources are those resources which we cannot renew, or once used cannot be obtained back. So this is the drawbacks of non-renewable resources. So once it exhausts, it never comes back, and these kinds of non-renewable resources we are well acquainted with the word as fossil fuels. And among the fossil fuels we have coal, petroleum, and all the inorganic minerals like iron or whatever it is. But here we are discussing about the power resources. From iron we are not getting power, so better we remain confined from with coal and petroleum, which you are using as non-renewable resources. Another renewable resources is non-renewable resources, resource natural gas. This natural gas is popular in thermal power station that produce electricity for daily requirements. Coal is also used for thermal power station. We know that the reserve of petroleum is going to be depleted slowly, and then we will finish our natural gas deposits, and after that we are going to finish the coal. but coal is going to be finished not in our lifetime. It will take time, almost about 200 years. But it is not a matter of fact. We will discuss later in about this in the videos of conservation of mineral resources. Now renewable is what that can be renewed. It can be renewed, and we can renew again and again and again, and it never exhausts. It never exhausts. So what kind of resource that gives us power and never exhausts? These are like wind energy, solar energy, and which are very important here about wind energy and solar energy. It never ends, this kinds of energy. Some other energy like hydel energy, one is also can be mentioned as nuclear power, because the nuclear power is present, the nuclear substances which is present among the sand along the coast of all the oceans is abundant, and it is going to be never exhausted in near future or also in far future. Another is geothermal energy, tidal energy, so these are certain energy. Now let's discuss in detail about these kinds of energy. Let's start about hydel power. Hydel power is that energy which is extracted from falling water. Dams are constructed across the river, and when the level of the water rises up and the water is allowed to fall freely over certain device called turbines, and these turbines are allowed to rotate. As it rotates, the potential energy which is reserved behind the dams, it transformed to kinetic energy, and this kinetic energy is transformed to mechanical energy, and this mechanical energy is transformed by a device called alternator or generator to generate electricity. And this electricity is supplied by various processes to the required places which is needed for domestic and commercial purposes. This is hydropower, and it can be also said as hydroelectricity. Hydro means water. And the power is the solar. Solar power can be harnessed by two ways: by photovoltaic cells and using the direct heat of the sun. Photovoltaic cell is most common here. Here certain cells are used made of silicon wafer. And this silicon wafer transform the sun rays to electric energy into the solar cell. It can be also said as a solar cell. And when it faces the sun, this silicon wafer transform the electrical energy. It transform the sun's radiation into electric energy, and this electric energy is distributed for use. And as much as the sun remains in the sky, we are never going to exhaust this solar energy. and it's very important. So most of the part of the world world receives solar energy, and in this way solar power are generated. But why we are not using solar power though it is free? Because the setting of certain machineries, certain devices for producing electricity energy, it is quite difficult, and also it is expensive. Once we set up, we are going to get unlimited solar energy for free of cost, but the initial cost of setting up a solar power station is way too expensive. Same thing with the hydropower. Another thing is that for solar power energy, that is using the direct heat of the sun. How we use the direct heat of the sun? The sun radiations are traveling in a parallel rays. As it parallels, there are certain devices like parabolic dish, like the dish antenna of our TV sets. The parabolic dish, which has a shiny surface, in the inner part, it transforms the sun radiations and it reflect to one point. As it went on from various directions, the sun radiation are coming, and here the temperature increases. Because the sun radiation here are concentrated very high, and the temperature increases maybe up to more than 500 degrees Celsius. Here certain fluid or water are used to heat. This water is transformed into steam, and that steam is used to generate electricity by using turbines. So remember these turbines. It is also used in a different system like geothermal power. Geothermal power, geo means earth, thermal means heat. That means the earth heat can be used to generate electricity. In some countries like Iceland, where there are many volcanoes, and the heat from under the earth is leaking every time underground. So under the ground there are certain cracks that are formed, and the heat are trapped here. From this crack the water percolates under the ground, and the water is heated enormously and the steam gushes out. So in this way some pipes are applied here, used here, and with these pipes the steam is collected to run the turbines. In this way electricity is formed. Iceland produces electricity. About more than 70% of electricity is produced through geothermal power in Iceland. Another thing is that tidal power. You are well acquainted with the word tide, because the sea waves that are coming every time that is hitting the sea coast, and when there is when the day is windy, the tides are more violent, and these tides, whenever they are coming and going back, and also sometimes we are having high tide and low tide because of the movement of the moon around the earth and also the pull of the sun. The water tends to rise in the sea, and as this rising water to some extent started to move from the higher area to the lower area, and in this way some construction low rising dams are used, and the water, when it rises up behind the dams, here certain big turbines are used to rotate the turbines, and in this way till the water in this area gets to the same level, the tide stops. And again in here, when low tides come, the water recedes downwards, and again the opposite is used. Here the turbine is used to run in the opposite direction, produce electricity. So this is tidal power. So another important power station that electricity can be produced, that is nuclear power. Nuclear is certain certain metals are there, minerals are there which are radioactive. Radioactive means this metal tends to produce certain energy by splitting atoms. This thing you will understand later in your science subjects. So this is called fission. And when the radioactive elements tends to produce some radiation, this radiation has very high intensity. It can penetrate through any metals or any surface, or any solid surface, and tends to heat the surrounding enormously. So this heat is contained in an area, and the heat is used to produce electricity. This heat is used to heat the water, and when water boils, it produces steams, and that steam is again used to run the turbines. So in this way, renewable source of energies are produced in this way. But the main fact is that I have already mentioned about non-renewable sources of energy. These non-renewable sources of energy which cannot be renewed, like petrol, diesel, natural gas, the LPG gas that we are using. These are extracted from underground through drilling, as I have mentioned about the mining as drilling. And this drilling, through this drilling, when it is extracted and once it is used, we cannot get back, and it will take thousands of times, millions of years to form under the ground again. So to the far future, non-renewable resources cannot be renewed back again. So in this way, renewable sources of power and non-renewable sources of power are completely different. Nowadays, these non-renewable sources of energy are going to be depleted, and they are going to end. They are going to end in the near future. And now we should be aware of these things, and scientists are trying to develop certain kinds of renewable sources of energy that can be used. Hydropower, which are already been used, but it has to be increased. The power generated by hydropower has to be increased. More dams have to be constructed across the river. There are many rivers which have high potentials to generate electricity. Geothermal also energy are available in selected places. Tidal are also energy selected places. Nuclear, there are about 5 nuclear station over the station in India, and around the world there are many nuclear stations are there. So the leading producer of nuclear electricity are Lithuania, France, Slovakia, Belgium, and Sweden. India is not a leading producer, but India has only 5 nuclear stations in India. It is your homework to find out this name of 5 nuclear stations and its location. And I will wait for your answer as a homework for the next day. So in this way, we are going to conclude. I am going to conclude this part, the nuclear energy, the sources of power resources. In the next discussion, we will discuss about the conservation of minerals, how we need to conserve the minerals, and how it is very important. So for the time being, we remain. But one more thing is that I want to admit that wind energy is also very important. But we are not going to see this wind energy in near future, because wind energy can be harvested only in certain places where the areas are windy, like in the surrounding area of desert area or in the coastal area. In wind energy, the wind is used to rotate a propeller, that's a fan like structure which is mounted in high tower, and that rotational energy is transformed into mechanical energy, and that mechanical energy is transformed into electrical energy through alternator and dynamos that are used in geothermal energy, the geothermal power station or hydropower station. And it is similar, but only the source of energy is different. So for the time being I remain. Thank you, and I hope so you will understand. If you don't understand, you can ask me the question.